All right, we're about to break down a really powerful, and I mean science-backed method for building some serious willpower. This comes from an incredible conversation between neuroscientist Andrew Huberman and the one and only David Goggins. And just a heads up, it might completely flip what you think you know about motivation.
So let's just start with a big question. What if that whole idea of finding your passion, waiting for that spark of motivation to get started, what if that's the very thing that's been holding you back? That's kind of the central myth we're going to tear down today.
You see, from a pretty young age, we're all sort of conditioned to believe in what we'll call the motivation lie. We're taught to chase those good feelings and always be on the lookout for shortcuts to get where we want to go.
I mean, you know the playbook, right? Find your passion, wait for inspiration to hit, search for a life hack that makes it all easy. Whatever you do, avoid discomfort. And of course, reward yourself when you make a little progress. It's a whole system built on finding pleasure and making things easy. But what if the harder way is the only way that really, truly works?
And that brings us to a totally different philosophy, one that is embodied by former Navy SEAL David Goggins. His method, well, it basically takes that entire playbook and just throws it right out the window.
This quote pretty much gets to the absolute core of it. Goggins isn't looking for things he enjoys. His entire incredible journey was built on confronting the stuff he absolutely hated, the stuff that sucked.
Huberman actually described the Goggins method perfectly. He said it's all stick, no carrot. Think about it. The normal approach is the carrot. We're always chasing some reward. The Goggins method is the stick. It's about creating your own drive by intentionally putting friction in your path and embracing what he calls the suck.
And look, this isn't some guy who was just born a superhero. Not at all. Goggins started at absolute rock bottom. We're talking over 300 pounds, stuck in a dead-end job, and battling severe learning disabilities that came from a really abusive childhood. So the key thing to get here is that his strength wasn't a gift. It was forged in pure, relentless friction.
He calls his own life barbaric. It's an obsession that goes so far beyond your typical self-help tips. It's a lived-in experience of constant, voluntary hardship. And he's right, you can't just capture that in a formula or a book. It's something that has to be lived.
Now, you might be listening to this and thinking, okay, this sounds completely insane. Just one guy's extreme philosophy. But what if it's not just a philosophy? This is where things get really fascinating, because it turns out there is real science behind the will to push through all that pain.
So is Goggins just some kind of psychological outlier, a total anomaly, or is there an actual biological mechanism that explains why his method is just so ridiculously effective? Well, the answer, as it turns out, is hiding in a very specific part of your brain.
I want you to meet the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, or the AMCC for short. As neuroscientist Andrew Huberman explains it, scientists are more and more seeing this tiny brain region as the literal source of our willpower. It is the biological engine for grit.
And here it is. This is the mind-blowing part. Research is showing that this specific area of the brain gets bigger, it gets stronger, only when you deliberately do things you genuinely do not want to do. I'm not talking about hard things you enjoy, like a tough workout you happen to love. I'm talking about the things you absolutely dread. That friction, that's the trigger for its growth.
The process itself is surprisingly straightforward, though, let's be clear, it is far from easy. You identify something you're actively avoiding. You force yourself to do it, and that very action builds up your brain's willpower center. But here's the catch. It's just like a muscle. If you stop training it, it shrinks. It atrophies. So this needs constant, consistent work. And please, don't think this is just about physical challenges, like running 200 miles. Goggins used this exact same principle to literally rewire his brain so he could learn. He talks about the suck of having to study the same single page over and over and over again for hours just to get the information to stick. That mental friction was building his AMC just as much as the physical friction was.
So how do we actually apply any of this? Well, it really just comes down to completely reframing your relationship with difficulty. Instead of running away from friction, you have to learn to embrace it, to lean into it.
So here's the ultimate takeaway. Real, lasting, inner strength, it's not found by waiting around for passion or motivation to strike. It's definitely not in some life hack. It is forged, piece by painful piece, in the fire of voluntarily doing the things you would do almost anything to avoid.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought. According to both David Goggins' incredible life
and the latest neuroscience, the single greatest source of your potential growth is probably hidden inside the one thing you are avoiding the most right now. So what is it?